Hi, and welcome to today's video about the top 3 budget picks and top 3 premium picks in the midfield category. So budget I'm classing as 7.5 million and below, and premium I'm classing as 8 million and above. So we'll look at the budget options and then the premium options, and I'll also talk about the players that just miss out on my top 3 list and give you my reasons why the players are out and the players are in. So let's get straight into it. So you guys can see my top 3 budget picks just up here in the corner. But of course, before we get into that, there's a bunch of players I want to talk about who are still good options, but just miss out on my top 3. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Diogo Jolta from Liverpool. So Liverpool have a great start to the season. Jolta should start the season with Firmino still at the Olympics as of this video recording, but he is always a rotation risk. Now, another reason is for Liverpool, there are so many options. And let's not forget, Diogo Jolta is 7.5 million. So I look at, and I think the best options would be to go Robbo, who's 7 million, Trent, who's 7.5 million, and then you got Salah, probably over Mane because of the same price. That's a whole debate that people are obviously leaning towards Salah towards over Mane. So I just see it as, I just prefer Robbo for 7 million, who's nailed, who plays the most minutes of the defenders in the Premier League, but also I look at 7.5 million and I just think defenders are more valuable. So that's why Jota misses out for me on that one. I just think there are better options at Liverpool, and I think 7.5 million, there are better options elsewhere as well. And maybe don't go for a midfielder at that price, maybe go for a defender or even a striker who's nailed. We all know there are good 7.5 million options up front, like Iniacho, like Antonio. People might even prefer Tony at 6.5 million. I just don't think Jota is the one for me. Also in this category, in the budget area, we've got Gundogan, we've got Fernand Torres, we've got Greenwood, rotation risks. Now, I think Greenwood could start the season, so Rashford is confirmed out. I do think a 7.5 million punt on Greenwood is a strong one, but when you're looking at the likes of Sancho, you're looking at the likes of Bruno Fernandes, even Cavani, players that, you know, we kind of feel towards them being more nailed than Greenwood. So there is a rotation risk there, but in terms of Gundogan, Kevin De Bruyne might miss the start of the season. It's still up in the air, but I think last season was not what we're going to see exactly this season. I don't think that's value for money. And Torres as well, like I said, just rotation risk. Also in this area, you've got James Rodriguez, Maddison, Barnes, so the two lads at Leicester, and you've got a playmaker at Everton. We don't know what Everton's going to set up like under Rafa Benitez. And also for these players in this area, it's injury risks, right? Because Maddison on his day can be absolutely class. Barnes, who's rusty, he's been out for a long time with a pretty bad injury, and we don't know also how Leicester are going to set up this season with Barnes coming back. They've signed Daka. Are they going to go Vardy and Iniacho up front? Are they going to go one up front? We just don't know. So again, I keep saying in my other videos on this channel and other channels too, I want to start the season with players that I feel confident in, that I feel comfortable in, that they've done it before, or I've seen something that makes me rely on them a little bit. I don't want to start the season with risks. I started last season with too many risks, and I spent the whole season climbing back. So I'd rather start with players that I know, players that I sort of believe more in or have seen more of, than players coming back from long-term injury or people who are injury prone. Most people use their first wildcard quite early as well. So I'd rather going with quote unquote boring players or known players or Twitter template players, whatever you want to call them, and then wildcard out of it rather than start with a risk and end up climbing for the rest of the season. Another player, Souček, last season was an incredible 5th pick. I still think this season is a solid pick as a 5th man in a 5-man midfield, but 6 million is now a little bit of a stretch. And again, coming back to the argument I said about Jota at 7.5 million, you can get any defender. 6 million for Souček, you could almost get sort of any good defender as well. So I think it's maybe a little bit stretched. Maybe as well, second season in the Premier League, more people are going to be clocked on to what kind of player Souček is, arriving late into the box or being that danger man on corners. I think more people know who he is now, so he doesn't have that element of surprise. And also for 6 million, I just prefer the likes of Harrison, if I was going to go that way. Which brings me on to Harrison. A lot of people have been pointing towards Rafinha, higher owned, 0.5 million more, but Harrison, great price, great stats. He was the 7th best midfielder with 160 points. He's now permanently signed for Leeds, but occasionally I just find himself rotated and not as nailed as Rafinha is. So you look at the minutes, 2,846 minutes for Harrison, 2,358 for Rafinha. So it's a 27-point difference, but Rafinha played a lot fewer minutes, not because he wasn't nailed, but because of injury. And I'll come on to Rafinha as well later on as to why I think he's just ahead of Harrison in terms of that pick. And then finally, in the just missed out category, a lot of people have complained at other content creators for leaving this guy out. I am going to mention him, but I'm definitely nowhere near my draft, I would say. And that's Bowen at West Ham. Now, I did have him last season when Antonio was out because I truly believed he was going to be playing instead of Antonio, and he was. 6.5 million, 141 points, 8 goals, 6 assists, 8 bonus. It's solid. Technically, it is solid. And he did play 38 out of 38 games. So when people say he's a rotation risk or whatever, he doesn't get minutes, he played 30 out of 38, but he only played 2,576 minutes, which equates to just over 28 and a half games. So it's not just rotation with him, it's also small appearances. So 6 of those games that he played were under 20 minutes, and you don't want to be spending 6.5 million on a player who, in 6 out of the 38 appearances he's less than 20 minutes. And some of them was like a 1 minute appearance was one of them, and a 6 minute appearance was another. He's just not nailed. And he also played more minutes than I believed he would have played if Antonio stayed fit. So when Antonio got injured and Bowen goes in at the number 9, or in the centre forward position, or whatever we would class Antonio's position to be, Bowen filled in for him. He only got that because Antonio was injured and because they sold Hallier. Now, West Ham, I've already said this before, they've got to go out there and get a striker. They sold Hallier, and then Antonio's injured, they've got Bowen up front. They have no other pure out-and-out centre forward. I'd be really surprised if West Ham don't go out and get that. And if they do, that's just going to lower Bowen's minutes as well. And then you've got Barama fighting for those positions. You've got a lot of players in those attacking positions that West Ham have. And I feel if West Ham add any players, especially a forward, that's just going to reduce Bowen's minutes even more. So I do think he's a very good player, but I do think that he played more than he would have, because if Antonio was fit, Bowen wouldn't have come in. So if Antonio, and I don't want to play the if game. I've already said I want to start with players that are comfortably in their sides. I don't want to start a player just in case another player gets injured. So that's why he misses out for me. So let's go into the top 3 picks. So first one up, Rafinha, 6.5 million at Leeds. So he's got Man United away, difficult. He's got Everton at home, not particularly easy, and then Burnley away. But for me, with Rafinha, he's more eye test than stats. So I did say earlier he finished I think it was 27 points behind Harrison, but he played a lot fewer minutes. So with me, stat-wise, he is in the top 10, top 15 of the stats you want your midfielder to be. He's only 6.5 million. He's right up there in things like chance creation, big chance creation, attempts. But for me, it's the eye test with this guy. And I think this pick is more about the player I believe that he can be, rather than the player he has been in previous seasons. He had a couple of injuries last season, not too terrible, but he had a couple. But every time you watch him, you can see he's the key to that league size, and you can see he's linked with so many clubs already. And I just feel as though, I said earlier about taking risks, but I feel as though he's a calculated risk. When he has played, he has put the stats up. But when you watch a Leeds game and you watch him, you can just see how good he is. And I believe picking him now at the start of the season, it's picking the player that I believe he's going to grow into be. I think he is going to be just a player that's getting better and better and better. So 6 goals, 10 assists, 11 bonus, 133 points. And Bamford had a fantastic season last season. But similar to how I felt Grealish and his relationship with Watkins is, instead of, giving them the chances, I felt as though at times Rafinha suffered that problem. It felt as though he gave players on the lead side an opportunity and they didn't take it. So I am going to suggest Rafinha is only 6.5 million. Granted, the opening game away to United is not ideal, but if you're looking to wildcard, say in the first 8 game weeks, Leeds not looking too bad there. And I just feel as though he's going to just keep getting better and better. Speaking of another new player, we've got Buendia, Aston Villa, 6.5 million. We all know Aston Villa's opening 3 fixtures are lovely. Watford away, Newcastle at home, Brentford at home. Obviously, no disrespect to those sides, but if you're going to open a season, they are 3 fixtures that you don't mind starting with. Excellent season last season, but it was in the Championship. Arguments I've made about looking at Championship players like Tony, like Pookie. Championship, Premier League, something different. Same with Daka. Daka's record in the Austrian Bundesliga is phenomenal. It's something like 27 goals in 28 games or 28 goals. It's ridiculous, right? But it's not the Premier League. But the last time Norwich was in the Premier League, he looked pretty decent, and I do think he's getting better and better. So last season, he got 15 goals, 17 assists in the Championship. Before that, in the Premier League, he got 1 goal and 7 assists, which isn't too bad. And again, no disrespect to Norwich here, I'm very, very sorry, but Aston Villa are a better team right now, okay? And with the signings that they're making and trying to make, and I think Grealish is gone. I honestly think, and I don't think that's going to be a huge negative for Bowen. I think that's going to bring him more into that Villa side. So if Villa lose their talisman, it's a little bit unknown. But for the first 3 games of the season, I really don't mind starting with Buendia. Great fixtures. He is a threat. And if Grealish is gone, someone's got to take over that creative responsibility. And I do think he's the man. So Grealish stays. I think he's a good option. Grealish goes. I still think he's a really, really good option. And then finally, one that might be a surprise for some people, but I understand the fixtures are not good for Chelsea. I do understand that, but I'm going off the idea of starting with players that you know in good teams who have got good records for the first, say, 8 game weeks when you want a wild card. And I'm going to go with Mason Mount. He's 7.5 million. He starts at Crystal Palace at home, who are changing their entire system, making really good signings, especially the new centre-back partnership. Seems like it could be good for Palace, but a lot of changes, short period of time. I mean, Palace at home for Chelsea is a great fixture. Then they've got Arsenal. I'm not being funny, but Arsenal recently, a mid-table side. And then you've got Liverpool away, which is obviously really, really difficult. But here's why I'm just going to go for Mount. And when I was doing the research for this, other names like Jota, like Bowen, they all pop up all over the place. But I don't see a lot about Mason Mount. And when I was doing the research, his stats are crazy. So we'll just, before we get into the stats, so he's almost nailed in a top 4 side. Champions League winning team. Mason Mount is, in my opinion, almost nailed. Now, they do rotate a bit at Chelsea in defence. They have swapped Werner around. They've put Havertz in that false 9 place. They've mixed it up a bit. But Mount seems to be a player that, persistently plays. So he's almost nailed in a top 4 side. He's on some set pieces. I've seen him taking corners, maybe the occasional free kick, but I'm pretty sure he's on corners. He's constantly improving year upon year, not just stats, but when you watch him play, he's growing into a very, very good player who's also one of the first names I would say on Gareth Southgate's England team sheet. He backs him. So, yes, I understand the fixtures are not good. They've got Arsenal, Liverpool, Spurs, and City in the first 6. But if you're going to walk on in the first 8 and you just want a solid player in a top 4 side, I just think the stats that he puts up are incredibly impressive. So he got 147 points, 16 bonus, 6 goals, 7 assists, and he got better and better. He's 2nd for chances created, 5th for big chances created, 3rd for final third successful passes, 4th for goal attempts, which surprised me a lot, 9th for penalty area touches for 7.5 million for a Chelsea player. And again, similar to what I said about Rafinha, he's a player that I just think is going to get better and better and better. So that's a little bit of an outside pick. But when I was just looking into the midfielders and then looking at the stats side, I was just massively impressed with what Mason Mount was putting up there. So moving on to the premium picks, let's have a look at the 8 million and plus range for these players. And before we get into the top 3 that I've picked up here, and I'll tell you why, let's have a look at the players that missed out. So the first one, Kevin De Bruyne. Feels like he's a forgotten man. 14% ownership, but he was only the 14th best midfielder last season because, again, it felt as though those injury worries and problems were coming back from seasons prior. I mean, even in the Champions League final, he broke his eye socket and he's gone to the Euros. I don't even know if he's going to be really ready for game week 1, who they play in game week 1 against Spurs. So it's probably putting a lot of people off. But 6 goals and 12 assists in just 25 games is incredible. They are great attacking return numbers. However, there's 38 games in a Premier League season, and with a 0.5 million price rise, I just think injury worries, 12 million for a player in a Pep Roulette side is just a little bit too much. Heung-min Son, talking of price rises as well, but I think a deserved one. 10 million, just signed a long-term contract. We don't know what's going to happen with Harry Kane. I don't know if it's going to be good or bad. If Harry Kane goes, probably not a good thing for a Spurs fan, but for Heung-min Son, probably not a good thing either. I'm not too sure Kane's going to go, but I think 10 million, again, is putting a lot of people off. Spurs with a new manager, so we don't know exactly how they're going to set up. And they've got Man City in game week 1 as well, so I think that's going to put a lot of people off Heung-min Son. If you're going to go for it, again, I think it's a fantastic option. And then finally, I'm going to talk about Jaden Sancho, 9.5 million. So for the new Manchester United man, I can for sure see the pull of Jaden Sancho if you are an FPL manager, and especially if you're a Manchester United fan. He's young, he's exciting, he's got great numbers in the Bundesliga, he's likely going to be nailed for Manchester United for that a massive amount of money that they've paid, and I can understand, and I have done a draft myself where I've gone for Sancho instead of Bruno, and I've also seen people do Bruno and Sancho together. United have the fixtures, but here's the thing, and it comes back to the point I said earlier, I want to start with players that I really, really know. I started last season after watching how exciting they were with Kai Havertz, with Timo Werner, and it bit me. I've never really sat down and watched Jaden Sancho. And I'm not going to insult the Bundesliga, and I'm not going to really sit here and compare it to the Premier League. I'm just going to tell you that I have not sat there and watched 1 or 2 or 3 seasons of Jaden Sancho ripping it up. I haven't. I've seen highlights, I've seen clips, I've seen the odd game, but I haven't sat there week in, week out, looked at his stats, looked at his performances. So I can't start the season with him. I've sat here and I've watched these 3 gentlemen for the last year or 2 years rip it up. And I can't say the same about Jaden Sancho. Even the players that I talked about, Heung-min Son and Kevin De Bruyne, I've seen them do it. I just haven't got that experience with Jaden Sancho. People will be attracted to it. I completely understand. But for me as well, here's another thing. When I've been watching some analysis about Jaden Sancho, when I'm trying to research more about him to see if I do want him or not, I actually think he makes other players around him a better option than him himself. So just so I can clearly explain, right? Jaden Sancho is like a defender magnet. He is more of an assist threat. But what happens is when he's on the wing and he comes inside, he'll pull maybe 2 or 3 defenders out. He's a space creator. He will make spaces in the middle for Cavani because the defenders will get pulled to Sancho, but also the pullback to Bruno. So for 9.5 million, I think Sancho, his assist potential is incredible. But I think what he's going to do for the other FPL players, the other players at Manchester United, like Cavani, if he's going to play, or Greenwood, if he's going to play on the other wing, or Bruno, to cut it back to, I think Sancho makes other players at Manchester United better options. So I personally have Cavani for 8.5 in my side, rather than Sancho for 9.5. So that's just my thinking when I've watched videos of how he plays and how he pulls in defenders towards him. I think his assist potential is high. We want our midfielders, our attacking midfielders, to sort of get goals. And I feel as though Sancho can get a lot of assists, but I think he's going to give other players in the side, like Bruno, like Cavani, I think he's going to help them get goals. So his assist potential is huge. His price is good. If you want to double up on Bruno and Sancho, I can't argue against it. I wouldn't go Sancho instead of Bruno. Even if he's cheaper, I still think Bruno Fernandes and Mo Salah are streets above. I still think they're the best 2 options in FPL, and that's why we see him in almost every single FPL template and draft, because I think they're far and above. So I can see the double up. I wouldn't go Sancho instead of Bruno, but personally, he's not on my side because I just haven't seen enough of him. So let's now get into the top picks. And I don't really have to talk about Salah and Bruno that much. We all know Liverpool's got great fixtures. Salah at 12.5 million. Top player in seasons gone by. His off-season last season was finishing, I think, was it 2nd or 3rd in FPL. Van Dijk is back. Obviously, he's got to get a lot of pitch rustiness off himself, I understand, but Van Dijk is excellent at playing balls from deep to the forward, which increases Liverpool's attacking threat. Other defensive signings as well, like Kanate, which means that if they can sort out that defense, they can go back to focusing on that attack. I just can't look past Mo Salah for number 1 option, and probably the player you're going to captain, 90% of the time in the first 10 game weeks. Bruno Fernandes, Leeds, Southampton, Wolves in the opening 3. I've said earlier, Sancho may make people question who they're going to go for. Top FPL player last season. I don't think he's getting any worse. yes, you can say penalties, whatever, but that is an opportunity for FPL points. And like I said before, I think Sancho makes Bruno even better. I think he's going to give Bruno more space by pulling in opposition players. So honestly, don't really have to talk too much about these guys. 244 points for Bruno, 231 for Salah, both nailed, both pretty much top of every stat, talisman for their teams. We know who they are, and we know why we start with them. People might call it a boring pick. Fine. I don't think it's boring having players that score lots and lots of points for me. If you've got a 2% player that gets 8 points, and I've got Mo Salah who gets me 12 points, I'm doing better because Salah's got more points, right? It's about points, not how much or how little owned a player is. The only argument I'm going to make here for no Bruno Fernandes, right, would be about captaincy. Now, actually, the way that my team is set out is I could either go something like Bruno and Buendia, or I could go Heung-min Son and Sancho, and that might sway people. The team structure is an option why people will sway. But we're talking about captaincy here. For me, if the ownership for Bruno is crazy high, and I'm probably not going to captain him in the first few game weeks, I won't own them. I won't own that player like Bruno. I double down on it because if a player is going week in, week out with 120, 130% ownership, but I'm not going to captain them, I won't select him. And that's just my own risky play style because I just feel as though it's pointless to sit there with a player that I'm not going to captain. I'm probably not going to captain Bruno more than once in the first, say, 8 game weeks, right? So it feels pointless to have a player who many people are just going to auto-captain week in, week out, and he's getting me negative points. I'd rather double down, get rid of Bruno, and bring in 2 good players for my 11 players in my team, rather than stick with Bruno at such a price, 12 million, and not want him to do anything. So that's just my opinion. That's my only argument I'm really going to talk about for Bruno. One is money. You could split that money anywhere else, but I don't think that's a good argument. But I do think a good argument is about captaincy. If you're looking at the fixtures, you've got Mo Salah and you've got another player, or you've just got Mo Salah and you're thinking, I'm going to captain definitely Mo Salah for the first 8 games. And I'm not going to captain Bruno. If his ownership is ridiculously high and you're not going to captain him and he scores a goal, you will lose points. And for me, that just feels pointless. I will just try and make up my points elsewhere. I'm not going to have a player in my side that I don't want to do anything. But again, that's my only argument, and that's just my personal play style. And finally, let's go on to man of the moment, Jack Grealish. He's obviously all over the place with his potential big money move to Manchester City. At the minute, he's at Aston Villa, 8 million. Again, those opening 3 fixtures, I've already talked about that with Buendia, but he's got Watford, Newcastle, Brentford in the first 3. So at City, at Villa, wherever he is, whenever he is, Grealish for 8 million is fantastic value. 12 million Kevin De Bruyne got 6 goals and 12 assists in 25 games. Jack Grealish got 6 goals and 12 assists in 26 games. So you've got a 4 million difference there and a 1 game difference. So Grealish, value for money, a huge, huge tick. He had a one big 12 match shin injury where he missed 12 games, right? So aside from that, he's consistent. He's the number 1 man at Villa. He's the talisman. But even if he goes to City, I know we've got Pep Roulette. I know there are so many options there. But I cannot for the life of me imagine Manchester City spending 100 million on a player to not play them. He has to. So it is a risk. But I still think as well for 8 million, huge amount of money that they're going to pay, I still think 8 million, he's worth that Pep Roulette. He can be your one risky player. If you've got 9 nailed players and you've got 2 risks, we know Grealish, we know his quality, we know he can get results. I think 8 million in a Manchester City side where he plays 3 times out of 4 is worth it. If he stays at Aston Villa, he's the talisman, he's the number 1 man, he's got the stats, he's got the points, he's got the skills. He's still a brilliant option at 8 million. So I don't care where he is, I still think Grealish, 8 million for what we can see he can do and what he has done and what he's capable of becoming in the future. I do think that he's easily in my top 3 choices there. And also, I've said earlier, Villa are making waves, so they've just had a bid for James Ward-Prowse rejected. Apparently, Leon Bailey from Bayern Leverkusen is nailed, so maybe competition for Watkins if you're looking at forwards, but hopefully that's someone who's got a little bit of a higher conversion rate, but threat in attack getting increased with the likes of Bailey and the likes of Buendia getting added to that Villa attack. He's just an even better option. If he stays at Villa, I think he is a better option. But you can't argue with a £100 million signing to Manchester City, probably going to play for the current champions, for a team that are probably going to be fighting for the champions again, for £8 million. I just think it's absolutely incredible. And if Watkins, going back as well, at Villa, if Watkins is up front, if Watkins finished more of the chances that Grealish created, Grealish would have had even more points. So if you could imagine him taking that assist potential to Manchester City and having a Manchester City player on the end of those opportunities, who knows where Jack Grealish is going to end up. So there you have it. These are my top 3 picks. So let's get to the final screen. Thank you for watching today's video, guys. If you liked it, maybe leave a like and subscribe just down there. Up here is my video on the top defender picks. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Who are your top 3 budget and top 3 premium picks? Or just give me one pick. Who do you think is a key player? Don't go Bruno, don't go Salah. Give me your best choice after those 2 players and let me know why in the comments below. And as always, have a good one.